Thank you very much. I love the sweatshirt. I love the logo. It's a different color than what I'm used to wearing in New York now. But that's what I'd be happy to do now, not from the press, but from students or anybody in the audience, if any of you have some questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them for you. If not, we'll go do a little thing with the press. You're very polite. New York, they'd always be amazed. Jennifer.
You talked a little bit about the Rhine plan. You talked a little bit about how in New York you were able to cut 15% of workforce without cutting services.
Right.
Give us what do you see as a path for us at the federal level?
Sure. Let me just give you some outlines. And there are trillions of dollars of solutions. The first thing I do is repeal Obamacare. Because they claimed when they were ramming it through it was going to reduce the deficit. Every study has shown it's going to create a massive increase in the federal deficit. It's driving up health care costs and the cost of government, and is another program that is non-sustainable. You look at the size of the federal workforce. The Bowles-Simpson Commission recommended reducing it by 10%. I believe we can reduce it by 15%. We did it in Albany, and Washington is every bit as bloated as Albany was when I became governor. You look at entitlement programs like Medicaid. Virtually every governor in America who's honest about it, and not political, would say that they don't like the Medicaid program the way it's run now. It has dozens and dozens of entitlement separate programs under Medicaid that bind the hands of the states, and Medicaid is run by the state. Change it to a block grant program. I did save a lot under Medicaid when I was governor, but I'd always have to go fight with Washington. Give me a waiver so I can do this. Give me a waiver so I can do that. New Hampshire is not the same as New York. New York is not the same as Texas. Let the governors, through block grants, reduce their Medicaid costs and improve the programs. And you can reduce the size of Medicaid by at least 10%. Look at defense. And we have great companies here that protect those who protect us. And we have to be proactive and have a strong military. But we have 153 overseas military bases. We have 15 in West Germany. And I say West Germany because they're all in the western part of Germany because they were put there during the Cold War to withstand an attack by the Soviet Union. We don't need 15 military bases in West Germany. We can reduce some of the size of those overseas bases and some of the cost of those bases. Social Security. There has been a proposal, this again is Bowles-Simpson, that for those not yet born, 70 years from now, we raise the age at which Social Security benefits kick in. Why can we not do that? Why can we not come together and say, sure, everybody who's alive, not just on Social Security Day, is protected, but we're going to do this. And Medicare. Just on Medicare itself, yes, we have to look at it, but think about Obamacare. Under that, $500 billion is slashed from Medicare by bureaucrats who are unaccountable to the elected officials. Let's look at it in an intelligent, bipartisan way and not delegate it to some unelected czar. So there are great solutions that will allow us to save trillions and trillions of dollars. The American people know this. The American people, again, are way ahead of the political class in Washington. We just have to hear we have to make sure the voice of the American people is heard in Washington and about this deficit, and that's what No American Debt is going to do. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Governor, if you look back to the stimulus bill, if you look to Obamacare, if you look to a variety of things coming out of the current administration, they're all designed, in my opinion, to increase the size of government, the government employee. And my question is, it seems to me we're still getting to a tipping point here where the size of government is such that it becomes self-sustaining as a voting bloc. And the issue is how do we get everybody mobilized to curtail?
You're absolutely right.
Is it doable?
Yes, it is doable. Let me just repeat it. You know, the size of the entitlement programs, the stimulus, and everything else have gotten to the point where we may be at a tipping point where can we still control this and rein in the size and the cost of government? The answer is absolutely we can. Because, well, let me just ask you a question. $818 billion on the stimulus program, not counting another 50 or 60 billion that was added to it later. How many of you got jobs out of the stimulus program. It was supposed to be a jobs program because we had an economic recession. And when it was passed, the president's economic advisor said, we have to do this because otherwise unemployment's going to hit 8%. Well, it hit 10% and it's way over 9% now. It failed because of exactly what you said. It wasn't about growing the economy and creating jobs. It was about rewarding political allies and temporarily keeping government employees. But that plan is gone. Not the interest, not the debt. And what we do need, though, is to replace it with pro-growth economic policies. And when I was talking about my time as governor, it wasn't just reducing the size and the cost of government. Because when you look at a government, there's two, as you look at every budget, there's expenses and there's revenues. Now, where does the revenue come from? It doesn't come from borrowing money from China. It doesn't come from having $1 trillion fake stimulus program. It comes from people who work, pay taxes, earn a living, and create jobs. So we have to stimulate the small businesses in this country. We have to make that private sector grow. And not only will we balance the budget by reducing the cost of government, we will grow the revenues. And that's why in New York, I mentioned that we had almost 700,000 more private sector jobs because as a result of that, we had more revenue so that we could do more things that the people wanted in the state, but with a much lower tax burden. They can do it in Washington. It's been done before. It was done in New York. There's no reason why it can't be done. Okay, well, yes?
How do you feel about the right to work legislation?
You know, when you look at New Hampshire, every single state has to find ways to lower the cost. Lower the cost for the taxpayers and the state government, and lower the cost for the private sector companies looking to do work and create business. But I was a governor for 12 years. And when people from out of state would come in and tell me, you should do this, you should do that, I resented it very much. The people of New Hampshire, the elected officials of New Hampshire, should make that decision. Hopefully they will. Yes?
You're at an educational institution.
Right.
I would love to hear your viewpoint on how are we going to, as a country, help our students be able to afford college.
Yeah.
You know, our oil prices for heating the dorms goes up. Cost of benefits go up. So the tuition has to go up because we have to pay people's salaries.
Yeah.
We have to pay faculty. We have to, maintain buildings. So how are we going to, as a country, help our graduating seniors not walk out with a house mortgage?
My two daughters are both engaged. One of them to a person who just got out of law school. And he's a great young man. He works very hard. He got a very good job. He's going to be paying off his college loans for over a decade. And you can't help but say, and I did that too when I went to college, but my parents and I had loans and paid it off over a decade. Education I could talk for about 4 years on because it is so important. But let me just say that whether it's healthcare, and Obamacare doesn't do this, the private sector or education, competition and choices help. And we have the finest higher education system in America. And the reason is that students with their parents' guidance have a range of options. You can choose between great public schools where you don't have those high tuitions, but you can still get an excellent academic training. You can go to private schools where, yes, the tuition is higher, but you make that conscious decision that the value of that education is worth incurring that expense. And you could go to religious schools, parochial schools, where sometimes the cost is relatively high, sometimes it's not, but you get a different kind of education. Of course, my 4 kids, I was going to call them idiots, but I wouldn't do that. They're wonderful, wonderful young human beings, all chose private school with huge tuitions, and we're still paying for that. But that was a decision that they made in conjunction with us. So more philanthropy, more giving so that students can get scholarships, competition so that students and parents have a choice. And I'll tell you one other thing we did when I was governor. We said we need more math and science teachers. We need more foreign language teachers. And we need to bolster our National Guard. So we put in place a state program that if you agreed to major in one of those programs and teach for a number of years, we would pay the cost of your tuition, regardless of where you went to school, public, private, or parochial, up to the cost of a public school tuition. And the same thing with National Guard. If you signed up and joined our National Guard, and by the way, we have no finer people in America than those who put on the uniform to defend this country, that the same thing, if you went into the National Guard, we would allow you to go tuition-free to the state university or give you the equivalent credit to go to a private or religious school. So there are ways to do it, and more importantly, though, are we going to have a job for those kids when they get out of school? And one of the problems facing this country right now is we have great young people with an excellent education who can't find a job. And that's because when the government is stealing from the private sector, stealing from our future and living beyond its means, small businesses, people who create those jobs, doubt the future and don't hire. We've got to give them the confidence in the future they're entitled to have. All right? Well, thank you all. This is great of you to be here today. Thank you, New England College. It's great to be back. And as I said, I can't wait to come back and tell you we have done it. America is running a surplus, our economy is booming, and we are going to continue to be the world's greatest country for a century to come. Thank you. God bless you.